Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for being here. Um, I'm excited to get to talk to some of you who I maybe haven't gotten to talk with much before. And I don't know, the stuff I'm gonna share. I just love talking about this stuff so much. So I'm grateful that you're here, and I want to encourage you to all right, go ahead and mute yourself if you would please, if you aren't muted. I want to encourage you to just sort of hang out here and listen. I want to say, especially if you're new, but it just really doesn't matter. If you hear me talk all the time and you know a lot about this stuff, you can still kind of just listen really casually, kind of listen to hear something new. I think is a great way to think about it. Um, what I'm going to talk a little bit about a new way of seeing um, habits and anxiety and really all of our experience is is not something that a mind can ever grasp. So your mind will be trying to make sense of it, and that has nothing to do with you. That's just what minds do. Your mind will be trying to make sense of it. It'll be thinking, how does this relate to my issue, and how can I use this to help myself? And that's just 100% totally normal. It's just your mind wanting to run the show and help you out. And so you can just think it and say, no, thank you. Thank you, but no, thank you. And just hear it doing that the whole way through. It's totally normal. But really, the kind of stuff we're going to look at here, it's not even graspable by the mind at all. It truly isn't. It's something that just tends to resonate on some level. It's like people often say, and me too, when I listen to things like this and have in the past, like, I just like hearing this. Something feels right, or something resonates, or it just feels hopeful or simple or something like that, whatever it is. But there's just a feeling more so than an understanding, definitely more so than an ability to talk about what you heard or share this or anything. Like, and that's perfectly fine. So just so you know, we don't have to be able to do any of that. Just having a feel for it or a resonance is perfect. I'm going to just say a little bit and just talk for a bit here about habits and anxiety and kind of how they look to me more and more over time and how I've helped people with them. And then I am going to go to some questions, and I know some of you submitted some questions. Um, there'll be time for that, and I just want to encourage you to hold your questions really loosely too. So there's a great chance that maybe you came in with some burning questions that as you listen for the next 20, 25 minutes or so, they might really change. Your questions might change. So that's normal, and that's totally fine too. So kind of just let them change. Okay. Um, let's see. All right. So let's kind of start by imagine that, like everything in life, let's zoom way out. Everything in life is this one energy. So there's just an energy to life that that loves to play and shape shift and take different forms and show up as different things and put on these different costumes. And so there's an energy that turns into what we call thoughts and feelings and behaviors and microphones and computers and water glasses and all of that. And it's really this one thing. I mean, we all live in a world of form with a mind that's constantly naming and labeling everything, and everything looks separate, and it's yours or it's mine, and there's qualities to it, and that's wonderful. There's obviously a lot of good features to that. That's a good thing. And it's a feature of a brain, let's say. A mind, a brain does that. It does this constant labeling, constant separation. It's a perceptual thing. But if we kind of back up from that a bit and we just pretend we don't have that for a minute, how it might be is really that there's just oneness. There's just oneness taking different forms and shapes and turning into things and playing games as thoughts or what we might call cravings or anxiety or anger or love or anything. And it's still that one energy. So in and of itself, there aren't any problems with any of those things. Now, as a thinking human, we don't like rage or anger or anxiety or things like that the way that we like love and excitement and fun. But that takes a brain. Again, that's not, this is all one energy, shape shifting into different experiences, right? So it takes a brain, a mind, and opinions to say this is good and that's bad. Really, bigger than that, it's all just oneness. It's all just what's showing up and how life is unfolding. So within all this awesome oneness, this one energy that's playing around as different things, there appears to be a lot of order and consistency. So, for example, there's a body, there's a mind. Sometimes I just call it a body mind. It's really one thing. You can't separate them too much. Very intertwined. So there's a brain, there's a body mind, there's all of this, and these bodies that we identify with so much as me or mine, they learn a lot. They pick up, they're just highly conditioned, as we all know, super conditioned. They pick up patterns and habits and they're constantly learning. And that's really important too, again, for the survival of this body mind, or this body anyway, right? Our brain is just trying to keep our body alive. It doesn't really care about accuracy. It doesn't really care even about our happiness or anything like that, our peace of mind. To a brain, it's got one main job: keep this body alive. So there's an advantage. It makes sense that to a brain, it would separate and label and say, this body right here is, this one's mine. This is my job. I'm keeping this one alive. All those other ones are different and separate. And to this one here that I need to keep alive, there's things that we like and things we don't like. Things we like are the things that appear safe, right? And that don't take a lot of energy. So familiar and consistent and safe. That's kind of how a brain thinks, what it likes the most. Um, and new and unfamiliar and potentially unsafe, uncertain, no thank you, because that's potentially dangerous. So you can kind of get a feel. Again, I'm just kind of talking in a really high level, just keeping it really light, but you can get a feel for how and why all this labeling and naming and good and bad and all of that starts in a mind. And again, it only happens in a mind. As far as we know anyway, trees and bunny rabbits outside aren't judging and labeling everything the way that those of us with a brain are. I don't know, maybe they are, but it doesn't seem like it as much. So this is again, it's not a feature of life. It's not like the way it is or the way it has to be. It's just a job that a brain does. So there's order and there's learning and there's conditioning. So this body mind is constantly learning new things that to keep it safe. Um, Something like, some of the stuff we seem to be born with. So there's instincts. If you put your hand on a hot stove, it's going to be pulled away. You don't have to decide to pull your hand away. You have no role in that. That has nothing to do with you, right? It appears to be an instinct we're born with. It's pretty similar, actually, that when we're little kids, let's say something scary happens or someone disapproves of you, if you're, I don't know, too loud and your parents disapprove of you, they say you're too loud and you feel that, there's a learning that's going to happen. A body mind is going to say, oh, don't be too loud. They're going to kick you out of the tribe. Like, let's be quiet. And that's not a decision you make. And it has nothing to do with you, but it becomes what we start to call like my pattern or my habit or my personality. But I want you to kind of get a feel for how that's just simple learning. It's just simple mechanical conditioning. So we don't learn. The body mind learns to pull hands away from hot stoves, to be more quiet and look for that certain look of approval on people's faces. I mean, this is happening like crazy. You have a stressful day, you come cuddle with your dog. All of a sudden, a mind says, ooh, dog is comfort. You start associating your dog with comfort. Now, again, we aren't doing this. This is all just super mechanical. It's just kind of how we seem to work as biological creatures. And and we aren't doing it, and it's not perfectly logical. It's a machine that's just trying to learn as quickly as possible, as much as it can, just for survival's sake. So when you cuddle with your dog and it feels really nice and your brain sort of learns that, that doesn't mean your dog is going to give you comfort all the time. That same dog could bite you someday. Who knows, right? And some days it's not the dog. Some days it's come home from work, feel super stressed out, go cut yourself or drink some vodka, and that feels like comfort, and that gets learned in the system. So it's not always logical, and it's not us doing it, but in a really basic way, again, just kind of get this feel for how there's just a learning that's happening all the time. I think of it sometimes like, just to keep it really impersonal. It's almost like any algorithm. If you watch Netflix a lot, you start getting the suggested things for you. Those might be horrible suggestions. You might say, I would never watch that, but it's a system learning. Or if you shop on Amazon a lot, Amazon will suggest things for you. It doesn't mean anything. It's not foolproof, but it's just sort of a similar kind of learning that happens. So this is all well and good. And I kind of just want you to get a feel for how, again, there's this learning that happens. And what if this is truly what's going on behind all habits and all anxiety? And I talk about habits and anxiety, but really, I mean, those are labels too that I don't know what is anxiety and what isn't. This is all just words. So it's really anything, anything that we're up against that feels habitual, especially things that we might call habits and anxiety. They're learned in this way, not by you. You're not choosing it. You didn't make it happen. You aren't keeping it alive. It's just a conditioning that's happening. So we have that it's all energy, shape shifting, turning into different form, going back to energy. Always that one thing. We have that there are these protective, survival based patterns and learning and conditioning that starts to happen. That's all well and good. There's no meaning in any of that, inherent in any of that. Again, I don't know. I love to think of nature. We're nature, but we happen to be nature that has a brain, and brains love to make up meaning and purpose and tell stories about things. But that's just a feature of a brain. That doesn't mean the meanings are correct, doesn't mean they're helpful, doesn't mean they're accurate. It's just what a brain does. A tree doesn't make up stories about why it has no leaves right now. It just is. So you can start to see how all of this is just what's showing up. It's just how life is, apparently. And then there's a lot of stories that come up. So it's all great, all has protective value in it at its essence. And then there's this thought of like, well, yeah, but these are my thoughts and my feelings, and why am I doing this, right? There's all this me thinking, which is also just what a brain does. There's a ton of science to that. And not everyone in the world is so me centered, by the way. And I don't mean centered in a bad way even, but there are parts of the world that really aren't all about me in quite the way that we tend to be in Western culture. It's not as universal as it seems. But either way, it is, it's pretty common for a human being, but it's a feature of a brain. Doesn't mean that there really truly is this you that's separate from everyone else. It's just that a brain forever will because you are the center of its universe, or for survival, it will make everything about you, and it does, right? Everything we perceive has something to do with us. It's nothing to do with selfishness or anything like that. It's just what a brain does. So there are these learned patterns and conditioning and all of that, and emotions happening and thoughts happening and behaviors happening. And there's this kind of narrator in there narrating the whole thing and spinning it all into a story about you and what it means about you and the kind of person you are. And by definition, when this life, it's just life arising. When life arises, and then the narrator's in there saying, why are you doing this? And what's wrong with you? And you know better, and having those conversations. And They're your thoughts and your behaviors. Kind of baked into that is going to be a lot of resistance. Because on some level, that's painful. That's painful. This is happening to me. And we do not want bad things happening to me, right? So just in that, I'm not saying again that we're resisting. You aren't resisting anything. It's not a thing we do. It's sort of just baked into it. It's like, oh, now there's a belief and an ownership and a good and bad judgment happening. Of course, there's resistance in that. It's just going to arise along with the whole package. Also with that me and good and bad and resistance is going to come a lot of change attempts, a lot of seeking, a lot of trying to stop things, because again, it's just keep it in really simple terms. Like if there's a narrator in here saying, what's wrong with you? You know better. Why are you doing this? Of course, or this hurts, or I'm suffering, I don't, it shouldn't be this way. Right on the heels of that is some fix it attempt, some attempt to change it, which, if you think about it, attempts to change the way that life is arising are resistance too. Again, I'm not giving him a good or bad label necessarily, but it is. It's like we aren't okay with what is. This should be different. That is resistance. So I'll just pause for a second and again say, don't try to grab this too much with your mind, but just see if you can kind of get a feel for like what's unfolding here. There's all this amazing conditioning, never had a thing to do with us, never had anything. You didn't do it. You're not managing it. It's just what arises. And there's a narrator, there's a me-centered mind in here calling it all ours, and then that leads to this perfect storm of resistance, of suffering, and then of trying to change our suffering, trying to feel better about things. The more we resist and the more we try to change, the more we suffer because we don't really get to change life. I mean, that's a whole other conversation. We could talk about how much ability we have to really change things, but essentially what's happening is thought and feeling are arising again with great reason from a body mind that has just learned something to do that it thinks is helpful, and we're just calling it wrong and fighting it and trying to go against that energy, and that just makes it worse. It just leads to a lot of suffering. So how do we not resist? Okay, so if resistance is suffering, if things looking personal leads to resistance, resistance leads to trying to change it, right? All of this is more resistance. That is suffering. On the flip side of that, not resisting, just being with what is, there'll still be conditioned patterns. People will like preferences will still arise. Habits, habitual patterns may still arise. Old protective mechanisms may still arise, but there isn't going to be suffering. There isn't a me in here now who's like, why is this happening to me? There isn't a pushing against it. It's just what's arising. Again, it's like turning on, opening Amazon and seeing that they suggested that you buy all these things and you say, no, I don't want or need any of those. There's no suffering. It's not personal. We don't tend to take the algorithm very personally, and it's just what happens, right? Netflix can show you whatever it wants to show you. You don't have to watch that, and you don't scramble to turn it off. You just overlook it. No big deal. So not resisting or just seeing it as what it is, that's, you kind of see if you can get a feel for how things would still arise, but without the pushing and the energy and the story and the meaning making and the me part of it. It's not going to be around for long, or it's not going to cause suffering to a point of more resistance, to a point of strengthening it over time. Things just show up and they fall away. I mean, a great example, um, really simple example is a lot of times if you see kids that have a habit, little kids, they suck their thumb, or they get attached to a pacifier, or they bite their nails, or whatever they do. Both of my kids had different things like that, and they were just little nervous habits, but you could tell there was some conditioning there for sure, and there was some comfort there for sure that kept it going, but they didn't have a personal story about it. They didn't have shame about it. We didn't make a big deal of it, and these things just fell away The only difference I want to suggest, and you see what feels right to you, but the only difference for those of us who have been felt like we're so caught up in habits and anxiety for so long is we have a really meaningful story. It looks incredibly personal and meaningful, which in a way just kind of keeps us in there with it, keeps it going a little bit. So without resistance, it just is what it is. Now, let's look at that piece a bit. Like how does this happen for people? Because I've been helping people with habits and anxiety for uh, many years, but 5 years in the Little School of Big Change. And there have been thousands of people that have kind of come through this. And it's a weird thing to talk about because, in a way, I mean, it's trying to articulate kind of what I'm saying here, but it's not like you can necessarily see. It's not like they do anything differently. There's no steps put in place, there's no strategy put in place. But what I always say and what it really looks like at the end of the day is like, well, people just kind of relax. And that's a horrible answer. If somebody says, how did your habit go away? Like, oh, I relaxed. I mean, it's really true, but it's a terrible answer, right? Because our mind's like, well, how did that happen? It just brings in all these how-to questions. But truly, it's something like this. It's like we look in this direction and we really get curious about, wow, what if this isn't mine? What if it isn't me? What if it's just what's arising? What if it makes no sense to try to change a thought or a feeling or a behavior because they're always changing on their own all the time? And they really are. And I know they feel like they're not at times, but again, that's because it's my anxiety and I don't like it. It's like if anything's yours and you don't like it, it's not going to look like it changes at all. It's going to look like it's just parked there, but it's not. It's not. It is changing, it is moving, but of course, if it's mine and it's a problem, and especially if it's a problem I need to work on, our mind's going to keep bringing it back and trying to work on it, and that just looks like what has to happen. So it's weird, but like in a way, I mean, it's really just we begin, and it's not even this, so don't hang on my words here, but it's so hard to put words around, but it's almost like, yes, there's a way of seeing that all of this is really just one energy. Anxiety is really no different from joy or depression or an urge or a craving or anything else. It's all experience coming and going. It's all energy rising and falling. And there's a mind wanting to claim it and own it and label it and judge it, and that's just part of what's arising also. That's just what's happening. And as we wake up to that more and more, things just don't look so personal. And when they don't look so personal, they don't look so right and wrong. You really start to see, wow, this does just come and go. And when they don't look so right and wrong and they don't look so personal, what's there to do? There's a the opposite of resistance, which is almost a leaning into it. It's like, okay, this is just what's here. So again, it's a horrible answer. I totally own that. Um, but it does look like that when you watch people find freedom from habits and anxiety that have felt so sticky for so long. It's like, well, they just chilled out. They just relaxed. They saw that okay, this can be here. This is okay. Bring it on. It's fine. It's energy. And when I think about my own freedom from 8 years of binge eating and bulimia, and more than that, a lot of years of anxiety, I mean, I would have seen it that way in the moment. I didn't see it that way at the time at all. But in hindsight, I can kind of look back and see, yeah, there definitely was nothing I did. I especially around my eating habit, one of the biggest things I saw early on was, oh, my brain is just conditioned to do this because this is what it thinks it needs. No, I can say that, and that's just words maybe to you at this moment, but I saw that in a really deep way. This is not about me. And forever before that, it was about me. It was again, all the big blanket of what's wrong with me. This is a disgusting habit. I can't believe I do this. I know better. Like, all that shame and guilt, and it's all me thinking. That really just kind of evaporated fairly quickly when I saw, no, it's a machine. Who do I think I am owning it? Like, I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't feel like I had to. So So it's cool to see that, in so many habits over the years with so many different people with anxiety. Anxiety is the same thing. Stuff arises, energy arises, life arises, and a mind gives it a label. And minds love to generalize. Our brain will generalize everything because, again, it's trying to keep you alive. It's just trying to be efficient. So even as we talk about habits and anxiety is a great example. I think I said in the very beginning, like, what is anxiety? Who knows? It's going to be different for every person, and it's not even a thing. There is no such thing as anxiety. There's just energy, and there's thought. There's energy, and there's stories, and in that stream of thought, which is always happening for all of us all the time, there's labeling. They're saying this is anxiety, and then there's memories. Oh, I remember my last panic attack. This one's probably going to be like that. Again, we aren't doing that. That is not on you. You aren't doing it. You would never do that. You wouldn't think that stuff if you had a choice. It's just the learning. It's just the conditioning. It's the learning. And the beautiful thing about that is we can start to see that again, like, oh, and there's a mind calling it anxiety. And there are the old memories of the last time this happened. As we kind of get these peeks into this to how it's just what's arising and it isn't personal, a lot of space opens up to kind of see it, in different ways and from different angles, and to kind of deepen in seeing, oh yeah, this isn't about me and I'm not making it happen. So I think it's really fascinating to see that, um, you know, there is no such thing as anxiety. Anxiety isn't a thing people feel. There's energy and there's a story and then there's a label that calls it something. Depression isn't a thing people feel. Even even habits, even things like a craving, say an urge or a craving for a cigarette or a drink or food or whatever it might be. Relationship issues, consistent stuff. Like it's a step, maybe several steps removed, but it's a mind saying, oh, there it is, there's my habit, there's me and my problem, and then fighting against that because that's not okay to have, trying to think of, trying to bring in new thoughts or do something different with it. And it's like a weight on the system. It just starts to feel more and more personal, and there's more and more resistance built in. But another way of seeing the exact same thing, if we were to just zoom way out and see it outside of the story that our little brain is telling, it's like, oh, yeah, there's that arising. Just like when my son would bite his nails. Yep. Oh, hands are in the mouth again. Pull them out. No big deal. Like, oh, there's that again. But again, we're so not used to that because of all the stories and meaning. So as we see all of this, and we see, okay, even the labels, the good and bad and me and mine and habit and anxiety and should and shouldn't, all of that is just part of this. It's just part of oneness showing up. There comes to be a real relaxing around things, and less rigidity, and we start to feel experience be far more fluid. And as everything relaxes and experience is far more fluid, there, again, we're not pushing against it. There tends to be the opposite of pushing against it, which is really a leaning into it. And a lot of times when I'm helping people through this, it's like that is so huge because it's not what we think it is anyway. It might be to your mind right now the most terrifying thing in the world to lean in to anxiety or to lean into your next urge or craving. I mean, I sure as heck was not doing that. I was not leaning in, and no one, you could have told me to lean in and I would have taken off. There's no way I was going to lean into that. It looked horrible. It felt like this huge, scary monster that was just the worst thing ever. But it doesn't stay that way. There's so much in like seeing this. Okay, yes, it looks that way and it feels that way for all of us, but that is learned. That is because of this habitual conditioned label and these reactions and all of that. That's learned. What it really is just fluctuations of energy that we're already feeling all the time our entire lives. So we do start to lean in a bit, whatever that means. Again, that's just a phrase. Um, but we do start to naturally lean in. And when we really lean in and explore it a bit, it's it's amazing because it's not what we thought it was. Our mind says, no, stay away, that's dangerous. Thank you. I mean, our mind is doing exactly what it thinks it needs to do to protect us. But when we lean in, it's like, oh, I can feel this. I can be in a feeling. I can hear my mind scream at me to go eat some more food, or don't leave the house, or whatever it's screaming. And I can see that as something too. It's not personal, just thinks it's helping. And all of this contributes to like just feeling able to just be with what is. And the craziest thing happens when we just are with all of this, it kind of dissolves. I mean, I don't know how to even describe it. And of course, there's no one thing that happens. And I'm sure this isn't the first you've ever heard this. But when we are just with what's there is not there for long. Watch any child, in any emotion, and they say that scientifically, like neurologically, an emotion takes about 90 seconds, the energy of it to run its course. You see that with kids, right? They feel stuff and it's just on to the next. The only reason it doesn't look and feel that way for us is because we're resisting with all of our stories. So there's something so amazing that starts to happen when we really, really look at this thing I call anxiety, or this thing I call an urge or my habit. That is a very generalized, very scary concept. And that's all it is a concept. We're afraid of our own thoughts, really. That's all it is. It's a thought our mind makes up and we get afraid of that label. But as we see that, as people see that, it all just changes and there's nothing to fight. And ironically, there's nothing to change. That's how change happens, is there's really nothing that we have to change. Again, our changing is resisting and saying it should be this way, not that way. It's kind of crazy that's happening when life is always changing on its own, and this energy is so safe and so not as it appears. It's always coming up and changing all by itself. So I don't know, but I think, um, again, I talk about this stuff all day, every day, and have for years. And so, um, I try to remember how this might have sounded to me when I was in my habit. And like I said, I was not up for leaning into anything. I was like, no, show me the way out, not in. So I don't know. I just want to say, put that out there. This stuff sometimes can feel, and I'm, very high level in a relatively short period of time, just trying to give you a feel for it. But check in with yourself and see if there isn't something, even if your mind can't make sense of it, or your mind is busy trying to apply it to yourself. That's just what a mind will do. See if something doesn't resonate, if it doesn't kind of land in a deeper way. And I would love to go to some questions. So again, I know some of you sent questions in. If you did, I'm not going to call in anyone in particular, but if you, because your question might have changed or whatever, but if you have a question about anything, feel free to raise your hand. And if you sent one in and I see your hand up, I'll go to you. But anyone can. You can also put questions in the chat. And so I just want to say a little bit more about, as some hands are coming up, about the Little School of Big Change, because I think most of you guys probably know that, this is where I share this information and help people see this. And it's not a thing that, it's not a traditional kind of learning. It's not like going to take some notes and here's what you're going to see. It's really a exploration of what I'm saying here. But the Little School of Big Change does that over 6 weeks with a bunch of content, really, really great short video content that I put a lot into creating, that you get to keep for life. And then we do 2 calls a week like this, where I'm going deeper into the content, similar to what happened here, and then coaching people and taking questions. And what's so amazing about this program, people from, I don't know, I want to say like 55 or so countries now have been through it, thousands of people in the 5 years. It started in 2017. Um, and what happens is you get together in a group and everybody has the same question in a different costume. People come in with anxiety, with a variety of habits, a variety of issues, but it doesn't take long to start to see that we're all exactly the same. it always is coming down to, I don't want to feel this because it feels personal. There's something I don't want to feel. I mean, that's at the root of everything, right? Just, I don't want this. This is not okay. And when you keep looking under that, it's like, oh, yeah, because my mind is telling me it's mine, it's personal, and it means something. But we really see over and over and over again, yeah, everybody's mind says that. Literally everybody. That's what a mind does. That's its job, is to tell meaningful stories about things. And it doesn't care if they're true or not. And they're not, by the way. But we see that over and over again. And it's really, really amazing what starts to open up for people along the lines of what I'm saying here. Is it's like, oh my gosh, like this, your mind says that exact same thing. Or, it's just everything is so relatable that it takes me right out of the equation. And when me is out of the equation, there really are no problems. There really, again, there's life. As I'm not saying that, kids don't get sick and the dog doesn't pee on the rug and like there's not physical pain, like there's life. But when there's not a story about what it all means about me and how it was supposed to go for me, there's just not suffering in the same way. And when there's not suffering, there's not resistance. And when there's not resistance, there's just a beautiful flow, a lot more fluidity, and a lot less feeling stuck or caught up in things. So, so again, I'll say a little bit more at the end, and you can ask if you have questions about that course. But the webinar is today, as opposed to a month ago or a month from now, because the course starts February 7th. So it's starting relatively soon. I lead it twice a year, and it's just helped so many people. It's really amazing. So if you have questions about those, go ahead and raise your hand or post them as well. Okay, so let's go to Melanie.
Hi, Amy.
Hi.
Loving your book, by the way.
Thank you.
Give you a little plug there. So something curious. I was talking to someone, a client that I was working with this week, and it's like I see this a little bit actually, and I was curious what you thought about this, but it's where I'd want to go to bed early, because when I go to bed late, I end up in a real like nightmare. I've not slept, I'm not productive. It really impacts my life. So the person's identified a behavior that they want to change, and they're seeing the problem that behavior creates. They still stay up late. And then they're now, to your point, like creating a lot of narrative and story about themselves, like, oh, why do I let myself down? Why can't I follow through? And it makes it into this much bigger thing, right? And I can see like that she's stuck in this resistance of like wanting something but not doing it. And I was kind of a little bit stumped. So I was curious, like, what your perspective is on that kind of challenge that people have, where I just want to be different and I'm still staying up watching Netflix until midnight.
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and it's a really common thing too. I think where it gets confusing, or it feels confusing, is when we're really focused on the behavior. And of course we are, in a sense, because the whole world focuses us on behavior and focuses on their behavior, right? So seems like it's all about behavior change. Like here, like you said, here's what I want, is to go to sleep early. So that's what I should be doing. But like you said, trying to change behavior, just going right for the behavior, just doesn't work. It's really, really hard. They haven't seen anything along the way. So it just ends up being like willpower, to try to change that.
Yeah.
So I think what ultimately happens is, like you were saying, you notice that narrative, you help them see, wow, there is like a really big battle that's just made of thought. It's not anything scary, or it's not even real. It's just made of thought. But this battle is happening, and that just feels like so much suffering, and with the meaning and the stories and all of that. And I think sometimes when we get so mentally taxed and everything feels so personal like that, we're going to go to some sort of coping mechanism even more so. So in some way,
watch Netflix.
Netflix is very relaxing, even at 2 a.m. when your mind is beating you up. There's still benefit there, right?
Yeah.
So it's ironic, because it's like, this is the problem, all this battling that feels real, and it almost leads us into our habits more. What starts to happen, I think, for people is when they see that this big conversation is happening in their head, and they really see it, like, oh, this is just a mind chasing its own tail. It says stay up, then it says go to bed, and it like, what is that about? It's just this little habitual loop. And it's seen that all the meaning, what it means about me and all the, I'm going to be so tired the next day. And that's all thought too. People tend to kind of be in a place where they're like, well, who cares? I mean, this is definitely how I am with these kinds of like, oh, okay, fine. So I stayed up. So I'm tired. Big deal. It just doesn't mean so much.
Mm,
You know what I mean? But it's looking at
yeah,
how a mind just makes this meaning up and really seeing the meaning is made up that starts to kind of diffuse it for people. Then they just
yeah.
go to bed or they don't. But again, there's no suffering around it. And then they tend to go to bed probably if that's what their body wants.
Yeah, I like that. It's like just because the tension and the conflict it creates when you're trying to do something different to what you are, trying to change the behavior creates the need for the behavior again, right? So if you just diffuse it, take the pressure off, and just be okay with what's happening and
Yes,
make meaning out of it, then so what if you stay up late or go to bed early?
exactly.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I mean, this applies to, it's a big thing with a lot of habits, I think, a lot of food habits too. I mean, when it was for me, like so much meaning and judgment on what I ate. And what is that going to do? It's going to lead me to restrict, which is going to lead me to eventually rebel and binge. And it's what keeps all this going. But it really kind of, in my mind at that point, when I was in my bulimia habit, it looked like I have to not want these foods or I have to, my mind made up all these ways it had to be. And in reality, it wasn't any of those ways. It was like, okay, so I ate some crap that my mind says is bad. Deal. Refresh, moving on, next moment. It's more that fluidity rather than trying to make things go a certain way. Danielle.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Yeah, you were just, this is awesome, by the way. I'm absolutely loving it. You were talking about food, and I emailed about some food stuff and some other bits and pieces. So
Yeah.
one thing I've noticed is it's as if my brain is trained to finish the plate. Like I can remember at school, like it being a big thing, you couldn't leave the cafeteria without finishing. So I'm guessing that was like coded in. So lately, as I've been like learning more about this, I've been like, okay, that's just something that's popping up, like you're saying, yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm just curious, how does that change occur, and how relevant is it to be mindful about like the quality of food that we're eating? Because I'm like really interested in, and there's been a lot of research around this, food causing anxiety, like the gut brain link, and if we're eating lots of sugar or lots of stuff that maybe isn't suitable for our body, then that's kind of sending us haywire. So I wonder if you could sort of talk to that a bit, and because that's something really relevant for me, is I'm like, do I just kind of let go of all of that knowledge about nutrition, or actually leverage that but without any suffering? And then how does it become so I'm just kind of noticing these things of like, that's bad, that's good, I shouldn't finish the plate, all that sort of stuff. I should finish the plate, I shouldn't waste food. Yeah, hopefully that gives you enough to go on.
Yeah. So, okay. So the bit about the knowledge, like tell me, where is there, does it feel like there's an either or there? Because you have a lot of knowledge about the food, the kind of food you want to be eating, it sounds like.
Mm.
But then, so why not just, I don't know, why not just do that? Is there like a downside, or is there like a either like a,
I guess it's about being really at ease and relaxed about having a strict diet for health reasons,
okay, yeah.
which
So
which makes it hard when you go out of the house, because most places that serve food don't have very great quality food.
yeah,
So it's like how to be totally at ease and relaxed with that, because actually there's no need to create any mental and emotional suffering around it, and at the same time support my body in making wise choices.
yeah. And so great. So it's like it almost feels like it's set up, and this is just what a mind does. Again, a mind is very black and white, very linear. It'll give you, it's either this or that. And I know
Mm,
you don't really see it in that way necessarily, but
mm,
that's how a mind will see it. It's either we're
yeah.
going to follow this diet and we're going to do the heck out of this diet. We're going to follow it perfectly, But when we go out, everybody's serving junk, and we have to be calm and relaxed, and it sets this up. But it's like, in the bigger picture, like, you're not in charge of how calm and relaxed you are. And you have the knowledge of the diet, and if that resonates with you and it feels helpful and it feels like something you kind of are going to live by, great. Kind of see like, okay, that'll just happen if that makes sense. Even that. So following the diet, you don't have to make that decision and do it. Like, the learning is in there, the knowledge is there. If that resonates with you, it's going to happen on some level. And
Yeah, and it's been like that. Following the diet is so easy because it's not a weight loss thing, it's an energy thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
So if it doesn't feel easy, or if it, when you're out, or when thought comes up around it and you're not calm and relaxed around it, that's just what's happening. I mean, it sounds kind of like too simple, but again, I want you to see that's not a problem. It would only be your mind coming in saying, why am I not calm and relaxed about this now? I love this diet. This is easy. What's my problem? Or something along those lines. Like, okay, so sometimes it just doesn't feel easy. Big deal. That's kind of the spirit of watching your mind have all these opinions about how it should be and how it should go, and just saying, okay, thanks. Just like you said about the clean plate rule.
Yeah.
Like, oh, yep, I learned that when I was a kid. That has nothing to do with today. But as everything relaxes and we really start seeing, oh, this is literally just a mind talking. This is a narrator just giving its opinions, and I don't need to listen to that. It's like, it's almost like we shift back, our identity is less like this. And it's like, oh yeah, I hear you. Okay. And there's room for all of it.
Yeah, that's really helpful, because I think what I've seen in that is it's as if I think I'm doing something wrong.
Yes.
Like, I think I shouldn't have a strict diet. I think I shouldn't be sometimes feeling not relaxed when I'm out and about. And that story is creating that suffering.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
And that's so big to see, because again, that's just how a mind says it. You're doing this and you shouldn't be doing this. And it's so full of assumptions that I think aren't even true. Like, you aren't choosing to be not calm about it. You're not in charge of this stuff. It's just arising. But there's that narrator in there owns everything. Oh, why are you thinking this way? Why are you feeling this way? You shouldn't be. So kind of seeing that as like an overlay on everything. It's always happening.
So how much choice do we have? Like, what choice are we making?
I know it's a big question. I don't to me, it doesn't look like we have a whole lot of choice. And I think that's great news. Now, I know sometimes that doesn't sit well with people, and that's okay too. But if we aren't in charge of what's showing up, I don't know. It'd be hard to say that we have a choice. You know what I mean? Like options show up, ideas show up, thoughts show up. We don't put them there. So it feels like we have some choice amongst what shows up sometimes. But then again, I think there's a lot of times when we kind of recognize, no, I would have loved to have not felt this way, but I couldn't help it. When you feel depressed, you feel depressed. You can't think your way out of it or act your way out of it, or else we'd be doing that all the time. So I don't know. It's a big question, but it's a interesting.
Yeah, it's almost like we have choice about how much suffering we create on top. Whether we kind of neutrally go with the experience, or whether we make decisions about what's okay and what's not, to some extent. Anyway, I'll let you get on. I'm sure you're going to go to more people.
Yeah,
thank you. That's great. Thanks.
I am going to go to some of the questions in the chat too. So just so you guys know, I'm going to go to the hands and then I'll go to the chat. Emma.
Hi, Amy. Hi, everybody. So I want to try and understand if I'm hearing this in the right direction or not. So I think I try to control my energy, and I'm hearing that maybe I need to, or I could benefit from stepping back and letting the energy just be. And so how I think I'm controlling most of my adult life, my feelings or energy, is through either eating in excess to give myself energy, or maybe to avoid resting, or because maybe I don't feel that I'm good enough, or that I need to be better or do better. So I fill a void, or I comfort myself through food. And on occasion, that's also included alcohol. So I am a very strong personality in terms of I like to control things. And what I might be hearing is it's not mine to control, which is big because I've done my adult life like this. So that's massive.
Yeah.
I feel like I need to go back to school, although I don't think we learn anything like this at school.
No.
So yeah, I don't know, can you speak around what I'm thinking or feeling? Or
Yeah. So when you say it's not mine to control, I'm curious if you can say any, and it's okay if you can't, but yeah, what are you seeing around that it's not yours to control?
because I think you talked about separation and me, and that maybe the mind is saying me, and that we're maybe not as separate from each other than what one might think we are.
Yeah.
And see, I've always done my life deliberately being separate and trying to be unique and the best, and to kind of like fight in a way because the past hurts, I think. Not that I'm given an excuse, but
Yeah.
so like life has been very much, yeah, it's everything's personalized. I can see my reaction is through everything's personalized. And if it's not mine, then I need to somehow maybe find, it's just that space before reacting, that space before reaching for food or alcohol just doesn't seem to exist. It obviously does, but I don't see it.
Yeah. Yeah. I love what you're seeing. I'm glad I asked you to say more about it, even though I know it's really hard to articulate. You are so feeling into this for sure. I love it. So it's like when we are this separate character that's away from everyone else, and then we have our unique characteristics, which is beautiful. I mean, there is for sure a flavor to all 8 billion of us that is special and unique, but I think, yes, what happens is that thought, that stream of thought, that's everything that's all about you, and it's just your brain, right? And this is Emma, and this is the things about her, and this is what we like, and this is what we don't like. As this separation and me grows, what comes along with it is, wow, I'm separate from the whole in some way. I'm a separate little me, and I'm not fully safe. Like we're we're separate. We feel fragile. We feel unsafe. We need to be secured. That unique you, which is nice, also has some downsides, and then those need to be compensated for and fixed. And you're right. It's not excuses, but it's like people say things to us, we hear things, we get conditioned, but everyone talks to us as if we're separate and fragile, right? And so our brain comes in and tries to make up all these strategies to keep us safe and okay. And that's exhausting. So exhausting. And it's all made of thought. It's all a mind just trying to help. But and it leads to all of our issues, all of our suffering, and all of our struggles. And it'll do that. Like it'll do that probably forever because it's just part of the conditioned body mind thing. But it's awesome to see like this other side of things. Like, oh, maybe that's just what my mind has been saying forever. So just like you said, you can start to get a feel for how, wow, there's a feeling of not okay. Every one of us has a feeling of not okay a lot because it's just part of feeling like a separate person. And then the solutions that a mind comes up with to fix that feeling of not okay are kind of unique, but not that unique, right? They're food or alcohol or a relationship or this or that. It's always something. And yeah, maybe, and then on the heels of that, I'm just saying what you said, and you said it better, but on the heels of that is like, okay, now this is a problem. Now I have this problem with food or this habit or that habit. I need to fix this. And all that is more resistance, right? It's more feeding into this separation and resisting it. So your initial thing of like, maybe this isn't my problem to fix. Maybe this is all just showing up in the story of Emma and what should be different about Emma. But there's a way of kind of being with that and seeing all that story show up and all the strategies that are part of it, and watch it changes, comes, it goes. Sometimes it's not there. Sometimes it has different strategies. Sometimes it picks on different problems. It kind of bounces around. And then we start to see, oh, this is what I've been living my life based around, as my mind trying to solve some problem.
Mm. Wow.
A lot.
Oh, that's food for thought. Thank you so much.
Yeah, sit with that. Thank you. Thanks for
Thank
sharing.
you.
Shelley. Oh, can you unmute yourself, or I might be able to unmute you? No, I can't. Can you unmute yourself, Shelley? There we go.
Okay, sorry. I'm not a Zoom expert by any stretch. Um, well, I'm one of those people that uh, doom scroll until all hours. I think the trendy term is revenge, it's procrastination. Um, and I do. I sit, I'll tell myself "Take the night and go upstairs at 11:30, which is really a sad state of affairs. Um, and then um, but, and then it's 1:30 2 o'clock, and I'm mindlessly email or reading articles. It's not just Netflix, and then the judgment that's coming on me is I lost cardiac and suddenly I'm dealing with years of sleep deprivation, heart disease, mother's dementia, so sleep deprivation. So I've got all these things, and I'm just not quite sure why I keep getting really bad rut.
Yeah, you're cutting out a little bit, but I think I got that, and I got kind of the gist of it. But what do you think? See, if you just focus on like, okay, I shouldn't be doing this. I should be going to bed and just going to sleep, or whatever your mind makes up as the ideal scenario here.
Mhm.
Um, it's tough because you're trying to force yourself to do some behavior that on some level clearly you don't want to do, or that isn't in your habit to do. I'm curious, like, what do you think this scrolling and all of that at night does for you? Do you think that there's a benefit in it?
There, it's relaxing.
Mhm.
It sometimes it's the easiest thing to do. It's
Yeah.
be required at a certain point.
Yeah.
Get up and out. Yeah, so some of that, and the sense of that a comfort
Yeah.
in a weird way, which I don't really understand why.
Yeah. No, I hear you. And I think I mean, it's so funny. Like, even just as you say that, of course, I mean, we all know exactly what you mean, but it's like, that's kind of a mind too. Like, there's a better way to have comfort. It's better to go to bed and just go to sleep and not do
Mm.
this and all of that. And as much as that might look like common sense to 107 people on the call, like, yeah, it's better to sleep than to stay up too late and all of that. Kind of see that that's this habitual story too. It's full of
Mhm.
judgment, and it has that story, and it's full of like what's gonna happen. It's not just like, oh, this is better and that's worse. It's like, oh, here's what's in your future if you keep doing this, right? It's a lot of meaning and a lot of stuff built into that. So I think it's awesome for you to kind of see the flip side, to where, no, this is on some level, yes, it's just habit, but it's comfort. It's familiar. It allows your mind to settle down. You don't need that for your mind to settle down. but to kind of see, okay, I'm doing on some level what makes perfect sense. We always are, right? Even when, again, like I said in the beginning, even when we come home from work and we drink the vodka or cuddle our dog or whatever, and that looks like comfort, like you might say, well, that's not comfort, but it on some level it is, right? We're always doing the best we can see to do that makes kind of perfect sense. And I wonder if just kind of seeing that behavior that way a little bit might take some of the out of it.
Mm-hmm. Now that I can see a shimmer there of a way forward with that
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
There's not all this resistance on it. And here I go again. And why am I doing this? And I know better. There just tends to be a lot of lightness. It might still happen, but really what tends to happen is there's just all this, it's like two sumo wrestlers pushing against each other or two people playing tug of war. When it's kind of lets go, the whole thing will collapse eventually. And I'm not saying you'll never do that at night. You might at times, but it's not going to have all that charge to it. And then if what wants to happen is that you just get more sleep, you're going to get more sleep because that's our nature. You know, your nature is wanting to just do, your body wants whatever it wants, but sometimes it doesn't happen because of all the tension and fighting.
No, that I can see how to work through that as a different way of looking at this.
Yeah.
Because what I've been trying hasn't worked. So this is a very different approach.
Yeah. Yeah, it's totally different. But yeah, sit with that and see just like, yeah. Like, okay, I see mine. I see you want to just do the scrolling tonight. And just, try to not fight it and see how it goes.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Cool.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to go to Amy in a sec, but let me look to some of these in the chat. So there's a question, how do you lean in? Which is a great question. And I don't know, because it's not really a thing we do. It's like leaning in, again, whatever that means, the opposite of pushing away, just leaning in and being with. It's natural when there's not a story and there's not this resistance there. So it's like saying when you're just enjoying a really good meal or enjoying like a nice walk or talking with your friend or whatever, you're fully in that. You're leaning in when you're doing stuff that you enjoy doing and there's not a lot of thinking about it. We're just, leaned in, whatever that means. We're just there in it. We're not pushing. So it's not really a how-to and a thing we have to do. It's more about seeing that it's our birthright. It's the most default thing in the world. Look at a baby. They're in everything they're doing. A little kid, they're just fully in everything. It's more that we identify with the stories in our head and we start to push away from. So as we see through these stories and we practice a little bit, and it's not a practice, but as we get more familiar with just seeing, okay, this is just energy. I can feel this. It's not anxiety or my habit. It's just energy. You just find yourself more in. You find yourself resisting less. Again, I know kind of a not great answer, but it's not a doing. It's just sort of a default. Okay, let's go to Amy.
Hiya.
Hi.
Yeah, I'm a little confused. I understand that I'm not in control of the thoughts that come in. I understand that it's not personal and doesn't have meaning, that kind of thing. But I'm feeling like just recently I've been feeling like the more I'm kind of getting in tune with that, the more I'm noticing that and becoming aware of all that kind of stuff. I'm also more and more aware of my other voice that comes in that kind of stops me from, like, my another voice will come in and like almost like I'm telling myself off sometimes or putting myself straight. Like I'll say, oh, come on, Amy, don't go down that rabbit hole, or come on, Amy, that's just thought. Like, so am I in control of that voice? I feel like I'm in control of that voice that's helping me to become aware of the other stuff. Does that make sense to you? So I'm a little bit confused as to what exactly, am I in control of that, or is that just random as well? I don't know. I don't know if you can speak to that, if that makes sense.
It does. Well, what makes you feel like you're in control of it? What makes you
I suppose because it's the voice that's kind of helping me to be aware of the other stuff that I wasn't really aware of before, maybe. So like now that this is all kind of making more sense to me, it's like it's the voice that's stopping me from getting caught up in my mind. So, and I don't know, it just has a more of a feeling of like I'm in control of that part of me that's stopping me from going down the rabbit hole and stop. You know what I mean?
I mean, no, I hear you. I think there's a way in which there's so, this voice, whatever it is, or voices, right? Because it's so contradictory. Is it multiple voices? Is it one voice that just contradicts itself all the time? Who knows? But there's for sure this identification with it. And I think there's a way our mind really just wants to see, like, okay, which one of these is me? Like, I have to be in here somewhere. I have to be in control of one of these, or one of these. And it's probably a good thing. It makes sense that it's the one that's kind of pulling for you. It's rooting for you, you know?
It's like the positive voice. Yeah, that's
yeah.
why. And then sometimes I think, oh, well, actually, is that just inner wisdom speaking? Or is that just still my random things? I'm just a little confused around that.
Yeah. I mean, to me, I guess it kind of looks like it's all a lot of thought. And I wouldn't want to closely identify with any of it as me or mine. It doesn't mean I don't, and we do, right? It happens, but I kind of see, okay, it's a lot. It's just what's showing up. But that doesn't mean dismiss it. It doesn't mean it's bad. It doesn't mean it's not helpful, because you're right. We do see things and we're like, oh, well, that makes sense. And it's narrated. But what I would suggest is, like, we just see things because that's our nature. The voice and the conversation and the narrator is after the fact. So it's like the narrator comes in, wait, see my little teeth, like the narrator comes in afterward and is like, oh, I think you just had an insight. Oh, you see that differently now. Now, that doesn't mean this guy brought that. He didn't bring the insight necessarily. This is how it looks to me anyway. He's just narrating what happened. So again, like a little kid, they're seeing and learning all over the place, but their narrator isn't quite as developed to narrate the whole thing as it is for us, because we get so identified with thought. Does that make any sense? I guess in a practical way, maybe how it helps is like, okay, it's all just talking, but it's okay because you're lived by life. Like, we are designed, again, to know what to do and to see things. So this gets to be a little redundant. And I think it's helpful if we don't hang on the words of this, but we also know that that doesn't leave us out in the cold. I mean, we are one, we are everything. We are lived by life.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. It's so weird. And I'm not saying that's like the answer either, but that's how it looks to me. So just sit with that and see how that looks. What I think gets tricky for all of us is when, there's so much conversation up here all the time, and it is all over the place, and it is always about you and the past and the future, and full of meaning, full of connecting dots, full of if this, then that. If I don't get enough sleep, I'll feel this way tomorrow. If this doesn't happen, that's not going to happen. That's just what a mind does, all of that. So for me, it's been really helpful to just say, okay, yeah, there's a narrator up there talking up a storm, but I don't need to get in the middle of that and figure anything out. It might sound like me. It might feel like me. I might feel like I'm in control of it. I have no clue. But what I think gets people off track is like when someone's really confused and then they're trying to figure out, well, what do I listen to? Well, don't listen to any. I don't know what you listen to, but probably none of that. Like things, hunches and just common sense and intuition, and life is just living us. We just get up and we do things. And that just seems like it's our design. Okay, let me go to some other questions that I think may have been in the chat. Yeah. So when I get an urge to eat a sweet because I'm nervous or frustrated, how do I lean into this? So I don't want you to turn it into a strategy too much. It's not a like, here's what you do when you feel a certain feeling, because that's resistance, right? That's like, oh no, I have an urge to eat a sweet and I don't want this. A lot of thinking there. I don't want this. This shouldn't be happening. I should fight it. It's way bigger than that. It's more of just seeing, okay, there's a feeling, there's energy here. There's a story here that says, eat this, you'll feel better. Or there's a movement. Maybe there's not even a story. There's movement toward food. That's how it was for me. There was just the grabbing of food. I'm like, I'm not doing this. I didn't choose to do this. There's all that happening. But what tends to happen is as we explore this and see it more, there's just like, you sense the fluidity around it. You feel less pulled around by your psychology, and you just sort of sense the fluidity and the space around it. And I mean, I know this is such a crappy answer, but it's like the field of possibility just seems to grow because we're less hanging on every single thought and strategy and word. So there's room for feelings that your mind says, I don't like this one, to just be there. When there's room for it to be there, you're leaned into it. You see, okay, it's just energy and it's gone. It's gone before we know it. But most of us, and I didn't either, we don't have that experience of just being with stuff and noticing, oh, that's gone now, because we've been so conditioned to do something else, to get out of it or do something or change your thoughts or whatever, when it just is what it is, there's just such a softening. And it's almost like I said earlier, it just almost feels like it dissolves. And then you're like, what? That feeling? That's what I called anxiety all these years. That's what I was afraid of. It is, in this short webinar, we're just starting to kind of look in this direction. So it is something that you kind of explore and talk about from a lot of different angles with different people sometimes. And it just starts to come to life as a way of seeing things. It's kind of tough to hear this and take a takeaway that, is going to apply anything. And that was one of the questions here actually too. How can I use this? Can't use it. That would be your mind wanting to use it. That would be your mind saying, I'm a separate me and I want to feel a certain way. So how can I use the truth to satisfy my agenda? Well, I don't know. I could never figure that out either. But you can see that you and your agenda and this is wrong is all made a thought. It's all just life showing up, and then it changes. And there can be a softening around that. And then the questions of how do I use this and what lever do I pull and what do I manipulate? How can I be different? Those just are not questions anymore. There's this really beautiful just okayness with what is that we naturally arrive at. It's not about practicing acceptance or being okay with what is. I don't know how to be okay with what is either. But it's something that we do know we are it. I mean, this is our nature until we started listening to our head so much, telling us that what is wrong. So it doesn't take much to get back there. And I don't know how it happens, but it happens. Let me see. I'm going to answer a couple more. I'm curious how somatic experience. Yeah. So it's all, I just see it as all one thing. Somatic is no different really. It's just, it's a different label, and it's a mind saying, no, I feel this here versus here. Emotional, thought, feelings, somatic. I think it's all just is what's showing up, and everything that shows up goes away. It's all this one energy showing up, shape shifting, playing with itself in different costumes. And and it's not about us, and it's not personal. It doesn't mean anything. As we see that, it just is what it is, and it just starts to feel different. Okay. I'm curious. Here's another question. I'm curious because I don't always give second chances to stop my overthinking. Is it me controlling my mind or my mind controlling me? I don't think it's anybody controlling anything. I think it's just what's happening. Question says, it's just that when the red flags are waving, I'm immediately wanting to get out of that situation, but then what ifs keep coming more. I don't know, but I'll just say kind of what I hear in this. I mean, I think ultimately it's really huge to just kind of see what's showing up. So my overthinking, you know, again, I know this is how language is. I say it too, but it's not your overthinking. It's just thought. And then it's more thought saying, oh, that's mine. Why am I overthinking? What's wrong with me? That's the overlay all the time. The me, my, mine, what's wrong with me shouldn't be. That is overlaid all the time on everything. The more we see that, the more it just kind of like becomes not a thing. Like, oh, yeah, that's right. This is not me. This is not mine. It's not my problem to fix. So overthinking happens, whatever that is, right? That's a generalization, a label too. But I don't know. There's sure that experience here of like a ton of thinking at times. And it's just the mind doing that. Every single time overthinking has happened, it's also fallen away. Nothing we do to step in and try to make it go away faster necessarily does, at least not consistently. You know, that's where it can look like we can stumble upon a strategy and then, oh crap, next week that strategy didn't work. I mean, story of my life, story of most of our lives, right? Chasing the thing that'll help pull that control lever. But that's just how a mind talks. A mind wants control of everything. It wants to know what causes what so it can prevent everything. And what if that's just what a mind does? You know, what if overthinking happens and then it settles down and discomfort arises and then it settles down? And this has always been the case. But all of us, every one of us, get conditioned to listen to our mind and its narration of it. And that's not how it sounds in our heads. So I think in this question about, you know, red flags and pausing and all of that kind of stuff, there's a lot of ownership. And this is not just you, again, it's all of us. There's a whole story of, I saw the red flag and why didn't I listen? And I should have paused. And what if all that is thought too? Really, what if that is a mind just thinking it's in control of everything? I know that sometimes this can feel a little bit like, oh man, she's taken my control away. Like not good, right? I mean, it can for sure. Or, oh my gosh, like, am I just a thought? All of this thinking about me has been just thought all this time. Like, this can get a little wobbly. It can feel a little uncomfortable at times to your mind, only to your mind. That's why I say, like, listen for what resonates. On some level, usually something in this feels right. We all know that life cannot be so hard. Life is not ours to control and manage and manipulate. No way. No way. There are a lot of really happy toddlers out there who are not controlling and manipulating a thing. There are a lot of really happy adults who aren't either. But most of us get really identified and then we have to sort of unlearn. Life is not hard. It's so simple, so simple. So if there's something in that resonates, again, your mind won't like it. My mind doesn't like it either. It wants this formula for everything. But we just kind of wake up to that. Just kind of see that that's what's going on. Okay, I'm just gonna. I know we're over time. I'm fine with staying a little bit. I just want to see if there's any more questions that are kind of easy to speak to. So one is about the school. So someone says, question about school. My native language is not English, but I understand quite well when you speak. Well, that's good because I know I speak very quickly. Although I can't speak it as fluently. Do the school videos have closed captions? Is it necessary to participate with questions in the webinars for things to work? Because I usually prefer to listen, not talk. Okay, so let me just say a little bit about the format of all that, because we've had a lot of not native English speakers, like I said, like 55 countries, I think, have been through the school. So the format is that there's a core curriculum and an advanced curriculum, and they're short-ish videos, 15 or so minutes a piece. And it's me really walking through this. So kind of like, you know, as if you know absolutely nothing about anything and neither do I, or just walking through this together and kind of starting to see how our mind works and open up to what's beyond it and all of that. The videos, we are having them transcribed. Right now, there aren't closed captions, although there will be for the next class that's coming. But we do it. We'll have written transcripts, I think, for them when the course starts, if that's helpful. But you do also get the videos for life. Like, you know, you get to keep it forever, so you can go back and listen. The calls, nobody has to participate in anything. It's all very optional, but it's a similar kind of setup to this. So I open it and share a bit, and then we do questions and coaching, and you know, watching other people being coached is where so much of the change happens. So much of the waking up and saying, wow, this really is just a mind doing this. It has nothing to do with me, because you see it in so many other people. So it's like this. You can raise your hand, you can stumble through. I will be super patient with you. And if you don't want to, that's fine too. You get so much from just listening. We also have a private forum. It's not on Facebook. It's in our little website, and it's open all the time. And it's myself and 3 other change coaches who are there as moderators, and that gets really active. So you can always bring questions and issues and coaching requests to that forum, and somebody's there all the time speaking to your questions. So I know for some people they'd prefer to write. It's just better, better for their English. So that's always an option. And finally, what you can do is we have a thread on the forum where you can put a question and I will speak to it. I make a video at the end of each week, because the calls get pretty busy and I'm talking to people live. So all those questions that people have asked that they want me to actually speak to, I make a video every Friday speaking to all those questions. So that tends to help sometimes the non-native English speakers. If they can kind of write their question out, you don't have to try to speak quite as much. It's also really helpful for those people who can't be on the calls live, which happens all the time. So there are 2 90-minute calls each week, but you know, people have lives and can't make all of those calls live. Everything's recorded. You keep all that forever. So the way it's set up, and it's kind of crazy that it works this way, but like literally, if you have a question or want to talk with me about something, it'll happen either live on the call, on the forum. You put your question there and I'll speak to it on a video. Every single question gets answered. Every issue gets spoken to. So it's kind of got it down to a science now, going on 5 years, and it's amazingly interactive and personal, as much as you want it to be. And a lot of people go through and they just soak it all in, and they never raise their hand and they never talk on a call. And that is 100% perfectly okay. I don't call on people, or, you know, it's totally up to you. I just want to see, oh, thank you. Some people are saying in the chat that they've done the school and it's been helpful. It's awesome. It blows. It's not me. It's like, I can say this without like not tooting my own horn here. I mean, it is seeing this. It is seeing the impersonal nature of life, and it is easing into this exploration that just, it's incredible what opens up for people. Incredible. People come in with a habit or anxiety or some specific thing, and they tend to see a lot around that, but it's everything else that gets affected that you didn't even know that you were there for, you know, because this isn't specific to anything. I mean, everything we're talking about not only is universal, so it's not specific to a particular person. It's how we all work. It's how all minds talk, but it's how all minds talk about anything under the sun. So it applies to any habit, any issue. And it is kind of cool. People come in and they have, you know, something they want to work on, their drinking or their smoking or whatever. And suddenly their relationship's different, their work life is different. And again, it's because we're just looking in this direction of what's already happening, how life is already flowing. It's already perfect. And we just have a mind narrating it. And it's almost like whatever needs to happen for somebody happens for them, you know, because we're not in there manipulating and changing. Liza said, I just love this. I had a huge insight here just now and started laughing, which is insights often lead to laughter. My mind is actually just running on repeat. Yes, exactly. That's it. Exactly. It really is. That's why I use these wind up teeth, and I use them all the time, because it's just like this. It's just an efficient little computer that is always running on repeat. And every one of us has identified ourselves with this. You know, we hear this, it's in our own voice, it's in first person, it's talking as if it's us. Of course we do. All of this has happened forever. And since we were 18 months old, when we learned about I and me and my, we started identifying with this voice, but it literally is just running on repeat. I mean, you can kind of feel I hope, sense the freedom in seeing that. What if it didn't matter what we thought? Because it's just doing what it's doing. It's not the enemy. It's just here to help us. It's just that we don't need help in that way. Awesome. I love, Mariette said it just feels soothing, and you can kind of feel the fluidity of thought and feeling listening. That's it exactly. I mean, a mind will want to make it into a thing, and make it into a strategy, and that's fine. It's totally okay. But I don't know, there's something so amazing in seeing, yeah, that's just my mind trying to help me. Really, it's all just this one energy showing up in different ways. And we've just spent a lifetime calling it names, calling it good and bad and me and mine and this and that, and having preferences around it that look very serious and solid. And just seeing a little bit about that fluidity versus the way that life looks so solid. Looks like this is a me. I only have this many years on the planet. I need to make the most of every moment. This is what I want to fix. Man, that's a heavy story. And it's truly nothing but a story. And it's a story that every one of us hears all day long simply because we're a human being. That story means nothing about you and your life. It is so limited. It's like, I say this a lot in the school. It's almost like, I don't know, this might sound a little dramatic, but it's almost like we kind of live our life in a closet, and we're like, oh, it's a nice closet. It's decent. It's a walk-in closet. It's light in here, we get comfortable in our closet. And then we start to see, oh my gosh, this is just like, I've just been in a closet. It's like the door opens. You're like, there's a whole house out there. There's a whole world out there. But it's not our fault. It's just how it goes. It's like this talks so much and we listen so much that we become it, or we think we are. We become so identified with this that whatever it says and talks about is all we ever hear. And you'll know, because again, this thing, it's all about past and future and you, and it's just so rule-based and linear and controlling. And it's so well-meaning, but to wake up to that and to finally have some space from that and to see, holy crap, I've been living in a closet my whole life. I've been just listening to a chatterbox, a narrator forever. It's huge. It's really not, it's not even possible to explain what that starts to feel like. And I don't need to explain it. We all know it. We all have moments, no matter what you're going through, where you just aren't in the room, where you're just immersed in something, right? Or you're just with someone, or when you first fell in love and everything looked different and literally looked and felt different. Or when you're doing your favorite thing and there's no concept of you and your life there. So it's very practical and commonplace too. It's not some giant thing for gurus and spiritual people. I mean, we know what this feels like. That's why this resonates. It resonates because it's there already. We're resonating with what we're feeling, a resonance with what already is, with not with my words, but you're feeling a resonance with what you already know, what you already are. So it's weird, it's like very profound, but also very, very simple and everyday and common. It's very different and new. And it's also the most familiar thing in the world. And it just is, it's just practical and it's easy. And I don't know, I could talk all day. I love talking about this stuff. So, I really appreciate you guys being here. Thank you for listening. And again, I know it's just like a little corner of something that feels pretty big, but I don't know. I hope you heard something that resonates with you. I'd love to have you in the Little School of Big Change that starts February 7th. And if that's not a fit for you for whatever reason, just I lead it twice a year, and keep that in mind. And there's also, I have a free podcast. I put out all kinds of free stuff all the time as well. So any way that you want to stay connected with this, if the school is not in the plan for you this time around, totally okay. But there's lots of ways to see more about this. Awesome. Thank you guys so much. Send me any questions you have if you still have them. And thanks so much for being here. I appreciate it. Bye, everyone.